Noah returned home from work only to find his younger brother Brandon and pregnant sister-in-law Lily lounging in his living room, unannounced. He froze in the doorway, keys still in hand, as the smell of Lily's lavender lotion mixed unpleasantly with Brandon's ever-persistent cologne. The television was on, some daytime talk show echoing through his normally quiet home. And Brandon had the audacity to rest his feet on the coffee table, shoes still on. Lily, curled up on the other side of the couch, cradled her belly and smiled like she'd just spotted an old friend instead of trespassing into his life. Carolyn emerged from the kitchen holding a mug of herbal tea. "Oh, honey, you're home. Perfect timing." Noah shut the door behind him slowly, the heavy thud echoing a discomfort he hadn't quite processed yet. "What's going on?" Brandon barely glanced at him. "We figured you wouldn't mind. Just a little detour while we sort some things out." Lily stood, her gestures exaggerated and gentle, like she was acting in a commercial. "We've been so stressed, Noah. And with the baby coming, we needed somewhere stable. You know how expensive things are right now." Carolyn stepped forward, brushing imaginary lint from Noah's shoulder as if they were still in the habit of physical affection. "Families should stick together, especially when one is about to start a family. Isn't that what I've always said?" Yes, she had, repeatedly. But Noah had always assumed that sentiment came with boundaries. Like, perhaps, asking before treating his house like an Airbnb. He glanced around the room. His coasters were moved. His books, usually stacked neatly, had shifted. There were throw pillows that didn't belong to him. He looked down the hallway and noticed a small suitcase with wheels tipped against the wall, open. Inside, a collection of pastel maternity clothes spilled out. "Carolyn," he said slowly, addressing her with the careful tone he reserved for moments when she pretended to forget what overstepping meant. "Did you invite them?" She gave a soft, exasperated laugh. "Don't be dramatic. They just need a place for a little while. You have the space." His jaw clenched. "How long is a little while?" Carolyn waved her hand, dismissing the question like it was a child asking when dinner would be ready. "Let's not get into details. Family is family." Brandon yawned, stretched, and settled deeper into the couch. "Got anything to drink?" Man, the drive was killer. Noah didn't answer. He walked past them all, entering the kitchen as if it might hold some answers, or at least some sense of normalcy. The pantry door was ajar, and he noticed new boxes of prenatal vitamins stacked beside his coffee grounds. A pink Post-it note had been slapped onto the cabinet. "No caffeine for Lily 3. He closed his eyes and inhaled slowly. They weren't visiting. Later that evening, after everyone had retired to whatever corners they'd claimed, Carolyn had apparently taken the guest room and Brandon and Lily the finished basement. Noah stood in the hallway, towel draped over his shoulder, ready for a long, hot shower. As he pushed open the guest bathroom door, the scent hit him first. Lavender and musk. His gaze landed on the neatly arranged skincare bottles lined along the sink. Moisturizer, stretch mark oil, facial mist. All Lily's brands. Next to them, a bottle of Brandon's cologne lay sideways, the cap loosely screwed on. There was a hairdryer plugged in. A towel with the embroidery, "Mama in the Making," hung from the bar. Noah's hand tightened around the doorknob. They're not visiting. They're moving in. The next morning, Carolyn asked Noah to give up the master bedroom. For Lily's comfort. He paused with his fork halfway to his mouth, the eggs on his plate already lukewarm, rubbery from sitting untouched. He blinked at his mother, wondering if he'd misheard her. The dining room, once a calm, sunlit space where he enjoyed his solitary weekend breakfasts, now felt like a courtroom. Except he wasn't the judge. He was clearly the defendant. Carolyn sipped her tea, her tone breezy. It just makes sense. Lily shouldn't be climbing those stairs every day. The master's on the ground floor. Much easier for her, don't you think? Noah lowered his fork gently. That's my room. Lily, seated across from him in a billowy maternity robe, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. I don't want to be a burden, really. I can make do upstairs if that's too much to ask. Her voice trembled just enough to invite pity, not so much that it sounded rehearsed, though to Noah it did. Carolyn reached over to pat Lily's hand, glaring at Noah in the process. "Don't be silly, sweetheart. Noah's not that selfish." Brandon smirked without looking up from his phone. "Honestly, man, you're hardly ever home anyway. What difference does it make?" Noah's eyes moved slowly from Brandon's smug expression to Carolyn's expectant face. The smell of toast turned his stomach. He looked to Lily, who now dabbed the corners of her eyes with a napkin. As a kid, he'd given Brandon the last slice of cake, the front seat of the car, the better toy at Christmas. His mother had always made it sound like love was measured in how much you were willing to give up, and apparently the scale still hadn't tipped far enough in his favor. "I work long hours," Noah said, keeping his voice even. "That doesn't mean I don't come home. This is my house. My room." Carolyn let out a sharp exhale. "We're not asking you to move out, Noah. Just shift upstairs for a while. It's temporary." He studied her. How she said "we," like some family council had convened and passed this motion unanimously while he was still brushing his teeth. The roles were set. Lily, the delicate one in need of protection. Brandon, the man-boy she still coddled. And Noah, the reliable giver. Again. He pushed back his chair. "I don't remember being part of this decision." Lily sniffled. "I didn't mean to cause drama. I didn't sleep well last night, and the stairs were hard this morning, and I was thinking of the baby." Brandon finally looked up, his grin cutting like glass. "If it's such a big deal, we can look for a rental. But good luck finding one with space and 0 stairs that we can afford right now." Carolyn's eyes turned steely. "You'll do it if you care about this family." The silence that followed hung like a verdict. Noah stood, gathered his plate, and walked into the kitchen. He rinsed the eggs into the sink and ran the water longer than necessary, the white noise masking the pulse pounding in his ears. That evening, the house was quiet. Eerily so. Carolyn was reading on the couch, Lily napping, Brandon nowhere in sight. Noah opened the door to the guest room and stepped inside. The bed was made, but stiff. The mattress was firm in a way that didn't invite sleep. He sat down and looked around. No pictures, no signs of him. Just a spare lamp, an old clock, and a small window that let in very little light. The master bedroom, his bedroom, was now occupied by people who hadn't even asked. His name was on the deed, but he was a stranger in his own house. ChatGPT, Ja Noi. Noa ja tratiencho kach tukfam, Lily ja naubuatoi, Carolyn ja goi no la le trove nakwa Brandon. The smell of rosemary chicken and garlic mashed potatoes drifted through the house like a lie told with a smile. Noah sat at the edge of the table, his plate full, but his appetite absent. He chewed mechanically, his eyes moving across the faces that now filled his dining room. Lily was glowing with domestic pride, placing dishes down like trophies. Brandon leaned back in Noah's chair, the one he always sat in with a beer in hand, his laugh rising above the clinking of utensils. Carolyn hovered near him, her hand occasionally brushing his shoulder as if affirming, "You're the one we've been waiting for." Noah speared a green bean and brought it slowly to his mouth. "To new beginnings," Carolyn said brightly, raising her glass. Brandon's back. He's finally finding his footing. She beamed, and Brandon responded with a smug grin, nodding like a man receiving a medal he hadn't earned. "Just needed the right environment," Brandon said. "Some space to reset." "And we're so grateful for this house," Lily chimed in, turning to Noah with a saccharine smile. "It's perfect. The baby's going to have such a strong uncle around. This place feels like our nest already." "Our." Noah didn't respond. He looked down at his plate again. The food was warm, the room cozy, but the tension clung to his skin like humidity before a storm. Across the table, his father Frank quietly shoveled food into his mouth, eyes locked on his plate like it held the answers to a question he didn't dare ask. He hadn't said more than 2 words since Noah walked in. Brandon launched into a tale of how hard it was trying to make it as a freelance consultant. how clients didn't respect him, how the market was tough. Carolyn hung on every word like it was a parable of resilience. "You're maturing so much," she said, clasping his hand. "It's not easy being a young father-to-be." Noah sipped his water, his face unreadable. The chairs creaked as people shifted and laughed. Lily placed her hand over her belly and murmured something about baby names. Noah caught none of it. He was staring at his phone under the table. He typed, "This isn't temporary." Ryan's reply came instantly. "Told you. Want help burning it all down or just moving your bed back in?" Noah gave a small huff of breath, somewhere between a laugh and a sigh. He hadn't invited Ryan over in weeks, partly because of work, mostly because there was nothing here that still felt like his. The conversation swirled on. Brandon was now talking about some app idea he had that could disrupt transportation. Noah's hand tightened around his fork. "You know what I was thinking?" Carolyn said, voice too bright. "We should host a little baby shower here. Just something casual. Maybe in the backyard? Oh, and we'll need to clear out the garage for extra seating." "Sounds great," Lily beamed. Noah spoke for the first time in 20 minutes. "That's where I keep my tools and supplies." "We'll find space for those later," Carolyn said, waving it off. "You're not building anything right now, are you?" Before Noah could respond, Frank muttered into his glass, almost inaudibly, "You should have locked the door." Everyone went still. Even Brandon blinked. Noah looked up. The weight of his father's words settled over the table like dust on old memories. He turned toward him, not in anger, but with a strange clarity in his eyes. Frank didn't look back. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe it was a regret. Noah stood up, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't slam a hand or break a plate. He just said, as he set his napkin down beside his untouched meal, "Maybe it's time I change the locks." At lunch break, Noah pulled out the property deed, stared at his own signature, and decided he wasn't crazy. He sat alone in his car, engine off, the low hum of nearby traffic muffled by closed windows. The crisp paper in his hands bore his name in thick black ink, underlined by the city's stamp of approval. Noah Elliott, sole owner. His fingers hovered over the signature for a second longer than necessary, as if willing the ink to shout louder, to stand up and confirm what he already knew. This was his house. He leaned back in his seat, exhaling slowly. Above him, the sky was a flat, overcast gray. His lunch sat unopened in the passenger seat, a chicken wrap, now slightly warm. He didn't care. The sour taste in his mouth had nothing to do with hunger. Carolyn's words floated back uninvited, like a whisper soaked in syrup. "It's just a piece of paper. Love is what makes a house a home." Easy to say when you're not the one paying the mortgage, Noah thought. He unlocked his phone and opened the PDF of his loan agreement. A clause jumped out at him this time, one he'd missed in earlier, less urgent readings. Unauthorized tenants, specifically those not listed on the lease, could be grounds for termination or eviction under Colorado's landlord-tenant law, even in owner-occupied dwellings. His pulse quickened. He hit call and waited as the ringing stretched longer than usual. "Hey, man," Ryan finally answered, voice low and curious. "You at work?" "Lunch break," Noah replied. "Quick question." Hypothetical, Ryan snorted. "Sure. What's the totally not personal hypothetical?" "If someone is staying in your house without a lease or rental agreement, can you make them leave? Legally?" There was a pause. "You talking squatters? Or family?" "Does it matter?" Ryan sighed. "Unfortunately, yes. If they've been there a while and you've let them stay without protest, the law might treat them as tenants. But you can start with a notice. Give them 3 days. After that, file a formal eviction. But you've got to do it clean. No screaming matches, no yanking bags out." "Got it," Noah said. His tone was level, but his grip on the steering wheel had tightened. Later that night, he walked into his home to find Brandon in the garage, shirtless, casually using his cordless drill. "You borrowing that?" Noah asked. Brandon didn't look up. Yeah, hope that's cool. I needed to fix the baby crib. Noah stood there for a beat too long. You could have asked. Brandon wiped his forehead with the back of his arm. I figured we're all family. No need to get formal. Noah turned and walked away. No shouting, no lecture, just quiet, calculated retreat. In the dim light of his home office, Noah opened his laptop and typed in, Colorado eviction process for owner-occupied homes. Tabs began multiplying like weeds, state forms, tenant rights, landlord guides. He read until the words began blurring. He navigated to the state's official eviction portal and downloaded the form, 3-day notice to quit for unauthorized occupancy. He filled it out line by line. The fields asked for names, dates, addresses. He typed deliberately, like chiseling a name into stone. Then came the last step. He reached for his printer, fed it paper, and listened as the machine began to hum, then click, then spit out the page. He pulled the notice from the tray, reviewed it, folded it neatly, and placed it in a plain white envelope. On the front, in calm black ink, he wrote, For Brandon and Lily. He left it on the kitchen counter, right beside the fruit bowl. Then he walked upstairs. Not to the master bedroom, of course. That room was no longer his, but the guest room light still flickered when you turned the switch a certain way. The bed creaked when you sat on the edge, and the pillows never quite fit the case. But tonight, for the first time since they moved in, he allowed himself the smallest smile. It wasn't satisfaction yet, just a beginning. The envelope would still be there in the morning, and so would the law. When Lily found the envelope on the fridge, her scream shook the entire house. It tore through the kitchen like a fire alarm, jarring and high-pitched, waking even Brandon, who had been dead asleep on the living room couch. The ceramic mug Noah had been rinsing slipped from his hands and clattered into the sink. He didn't move. He knew exactly what she had found. Brandon, Lily screeched, waving the open envelope as if it were a snake. Did you see this? Did you see what your brother just did? Footsteps thundered down the hallway. Brandon appeared shirtless, hair wild, face groggy. What the hell? Lily shoved the paper against his chest. He's evicting us, a 3-day notice. I could have a miscarriage from this kind of stress. Carolyn materialized next, clutching her robe tight as though the walls had collapsed. What's going on? She demanded. Lily turned to her like a child seeking rescue. Noah is kicking us out. The kitchen was chaos. Slammed drawers, raised voices, the hum of the fridge the only constant. Noah stood at the edge, towel still in hand, watching them like a man observing a play from backstage. Calm, detached, prepared. Carolyn snatched the notice and skimmed it. Her face darkened instantly. What is this? She barked. You went behind our backs and filed this garbage? It's not garbage, Noah said evenly. It's legal. You're not tenants. There's no lease. You're not guests. I never invited you to stay. So this is notice. Carolyn looked genuinely stunned, like a teacher slapped by her best student. This is your family, she said, her voice shaking not with grief, but with fury. How could you do this to your own brother? Brandon rolled his eyes, tossing the paper onto the counter. You can't evict blood, bro. We're not some strangers squatting. Noah met his gaze without blinking. Watch me. The room fell briefly silent. Then Lily started crying. Not soft weeping, sobs that bounced off the kitchen tile and hit everyone like shrapnel. I'm pregnant, Noah, with your niece or nephew. How can you do this? Carolyn moved to Lily's side, arm around her shoulders, glaring at Noah like he'd drawn a weapon. You always did this, she spat. You were always cold, always distant. I told myself it was because you were focused. Serious. But this? She held up the notice like it was a verdict. This is betrayal. Noah took a slow breath and reached into his pocket. You want clarity? Fine. He pulled out his phone and pressed a contact. The ringtone barely rang once before the call connected. Hi, Doug. Can you confirm what we talked about yesterday? He placed the phone on speaker. The lawyer's voice came through, crisp and direct. Yes, under Colorado law, if there is no lease, no rental agreement, and the individuals occupying the property are doing so without the homeowner's consent, the owner is within legal rights to initiate an eviction, even if the individuals are family. Brandon opened his mouth to object, but Noah raised a hand. The lawyer continued. This includes delivering a 3-day notice. If there's no compliance or exit, the owner may file a formal eviction with the county. Noah looked at each of them in turn. His brother, his sister-in-law, his mother. I'm done being the silent one. I'm done paying for everyone else's choices. Lily sniffled. Carolyn's jaw clenched, and Brandon muttered something inaudible. Noah picked up the envelope from the counter and calmly slid it across the table. That notice still stands. Carolyn slapped her hand on it, her voice lower now but no less sharp. If you do this, you'll lose your family. Noah didn't flinch. He just stared back, the silence around him louder than their rage. For the first time in years, the roles had shifted. And they knew it. Noah opened his father's old tablet and found a forgotten voice memo. And Carolyn's voice filled the room. The sound of her voice was unmistakable. Cheerful, but edged with something darker, something calculated. It sent a chill crawling down Noah's spine before he even made out the words. The tablet was a dusty thing, half buried beneath tax files and receipts in the locked drawer of Frank's old desk. Noah hadn't planned to go snooping. He was looking for blueprints, records for the garage, maybe a way to justify limiting access. But when he tapped the screen and saw a single file labeled March 12th, Kitchen, curiosity outweighed caution. He hit play. He's barely here anyway, Carolyn was saying. We just have to give it time. Another voice chimed in, lighter, more anxious. Lily. I just don't want him to flip. What if he kicks us out before the baby comes? A brief pause. Then Carolyn again, calm and dismissive. Noah always caves. Once the baby arrives, he'll have no choice. Blood wins. Noah froze. The room around him shrank, the air thickening with every passing second. He pressed pause, then rewinded 10 seconds, then hit play again, just to be sure he wasn't imagining it. He wasn't. The recording was 6 minutes long. He sat still as it played through. His father's tablet propped against a stack of unpaid utilities Brandon had accidentally left in the office. There were no visual cues, only the cold, casual conspiracy of two women in his kitchen, plotting not with rage, but with assurance. Carolyn's voice again. He doesn't use the garage much. Once Brandon gets back on his feet, we'll work it out. Lily. I mean, technically it'll be our home by then, right? Carolyn laughed softly. That's the goal. Just don't pressure him too fast. Let him think it's his idea. Noah's hand trembled slightly, not from shock, but recognition. It was all a pattern. It always had been. The dinners, the bedroom, the baby talk. It wasn't chaos. It was choreography. He leaned back in his chair, letting the recording finish. The final line landed like a punch to the chest. Don't worry, Carolyn said. He always gives in. Noah sat in silence for a long time. He didn't cry. He didn't shout. He simply stared at the tablet like it was a mirror, one that had just shown him a face he'd refused to acknowledge for years. His mother, the family matriarch, the peacemaker, the woman who taught him to share his toys and be the bigger person. She hadn't been guiding him toward kindness. She'd been conditioning him to surrender. He reached for his encrypted flash drive, the one Ryan insisted he keep for documents and legal backups. He connected it to the tablet and copied the file over. His movements were precise now, detached. The chaos from that morning still hung in the house like smoke after a fire. But here, in the solitude of his study, Noah found something that steadied him. When the transfer finished, he unplugged the drive, held it for a moment, then slipped it into the hidden compartment in his desk drawer. He looked down at the tablet again. His father's old device. Frank had barely spoken these past few days. Just that strange comment at dinner, and then silence. But maybe silence wasn't the same as absence. Maybe, in his own quiet way, Frank had spoken. Noah stood, the wooden chair creaking beneath him. He looked out the study window, where autumn leaves swirled in the backyard. A place once filled with memories of grilling, laughter, and peace. Now a battleground dressed in calm. He exhaled slowly. Then, to no one but himself, he whispered, "Not this time." Ryan listened to the voice memo and said, "That's not a misunderstanding. That's a setup." The sound of the recording ended with a soft click, followed by a silence so heavy it pressed against the walls of Ryan's apartment. The dim lamplight cast long shadows across the cluttered coffee table, where 2 open laptops, a mug of cold coffee, and a yellow legal pad were crammed together like pieces in a rushed puzzle. Noah sat forward, elbows on knees, hands clasped tight. He'd played the recording twice. Ryan hadn't flinched either time, but now his jaw was tight, eyes narrowed like he'd seen a crime scene and was already sketching it from memory. "I knew they were manipulative," Noah said quietly. "But hearing it like this, it's calculated." Ryan nodded slowly, then picked up the tablet and replayed the final line again. Carolyn's smug assurance that Noah always gives in. He muted it after that. "This isn't just manipulation, man. This is coordinated. They had a timeline, a goal, that makes it intent." Noah glanced toward the window where the city lights blinked in the distance. "So it holds up? In court?" Ryan sat back, arms crossed. "Depends on the judge. But this isn't a criminal trial. For a civil eviction, it's gold. Shows motive, shows planning. Shows you're not overreacting, you're responding." Noah exhaled slowly. "So what next?" Ryan reached for his laptop and began typing. "First, finish the notice delivery process. Then serve Brandon with a formal eviction filing. But I'd take it a step further. Get a clause in place. If they retaliate, you want the option for a restraining order ready." Noah gave a half laugh, bitter and hollow. "My own mother might fall under that." Ryan looked up. "Don't think of her as mother right now. Think of her as co-conspirator. That's how she's thinking of you." The screen on Noah's phone lit up. A new message from Brandon. "Brandon, you're playing with fire. Don't forget whose family." He showed it to Ryan without a word. Ryan shook his head and reached for the legal pad. "Start saving all these. Every message, every voicemail, every dirty look if you can get it on camera. You need to build a pattern of behavior. Any harassment, document it." Noah nodded slowly, eyes now harder than before. "I should have done this years ago." Ryan paused, then leaned forward. "I'm going to say something, and you're not going to like it." Noah didn't answer. "This didn't start with the house. It started when they realized you'd always rather walk away than fight." Noah said nothing. He didn't have to. The weight of that sentence landed like a dull thud, familiar but newly sharpened. "I'm not walking away this time," he said. "Good," Ryan replied, "because you've got leverage now. Use it." Noah took out his encrypted flash drive, plugged it into Ryan's laptop, and opened the folders. He dragged over the deed, the scanned mortgage documents, and the voice memo, labeling each file clearly. Then he opened a secure browser and submitted everything to the eviction attorney's online portal. A few clicks, a brief form, and the files were gone, uploaded into the hands of someone who could wield them with precision. "There," he muttered. "Official now." Ryan closed the laptop, then leaned back. "Also," he added, his voice shifting into something more playful but no less serious. "Lily's iCloud? Not as private as she thinks. Her shared family folder is wide open. You want in?" Noah blinked. "You're joking." Ryan grinned. "Not even a little. She's been backing up everything. Notes, texts, even audio messages. All visible, all downloadable." Noah's brows drew together. "You've seen what's in there?" "Not yet, but I will. And if there's anything else that proves intent, we add it to the pile." Noah stared at him. The weight of exhaustion and years of bending had begun to lift, just enough for focus to push through. This wasn't just about reclaiming a house anymore. It was about reclaiming his name, his dignity, his place in a family that had long mistaken his silence for submission. "Do it," he said finally. "Let's see what else they left behind." ChatGPT Janoi. Inside Lily's synced iCloud was a screenshot that cracked the entire performance. Ryan's fingers tapped rhythmically across the keyboard, his eyes narrowing as each new folder opened. Noah stood behind him, arms crossed, heart thudding with a mixture of dread and anticipation. The morning sun spilled through Ryan's apartment window, washing the room in gold, but the glow on the laptop screen outshone it all. "I told you," Ryan said without looking up. "People like Lily don't just lie with words, they lie with clicks, and they always save receipts." He clicked into the messages backup. A stream of texts popped up, arranged in bubbles of blue and gray. Ryan navigated quickly, scanning contact names, opening threads. And then, he stopped. Bingo. Noah leaned in. The text was from Lily to someone named Jessie Dot. The date, 2 weeks before Brandon and Lily moved in. Lily, "We're going to try the pregnancy card. Carolyn says it always works on him." Jessie, "OMG lol, do it. He's the quiet one, right?" Lily, "Yeah, quiet and stupid predictable. Let's see if the golden child can cry enough for this mansion." Noah's stomach turned. There it was. Plain, brutal, and smug. Not just manipulation. Mockery. He scrolled further as Ryan sat back and let him absorb it. Screenshots followed. Lily's camera roll littered with selfies from the guest bathroom, her bump exaggerated under loose shirts, captions like, "Queen of the Nest" and "Baby Trap Engaged." Noah didn't speak. He simply began selecting files, dragging each damning bit of evidence into a folder titled House of Cards. Every message, every screenshot, every timestamp became a tile in the mosaic of betrayal. Then another message appeared, this one from Brandon to Lily. Brandon, "Told you he'd fold. Stupid, predictable Noah." Lily, "Still can't believe he gave us the master. You owe me sushi and that spa day now." Noah clenched his jaw. They think this is a game. Ryan was already compressing the folder into a zip file. To them, it is. You're the final level. You were never family. You were an obstacle. Noah sat down heavily in the chair next to Ryan's. And my mom was the cheat code. Ryan gave a grim nod. Exactly. But this... He tapped the folder, now titled Leverage Primary. This rewrites the rules. They added the deed, the voice memo, the text threats from Brandon, and now these screenshots. Layer by layer, the mask of innocence peeled away. What had begun as suspicion had grown into a full-blown case, not just for eviction, but for reclaiming identity. "We send it to the lawyer?" Noah asked. Ryan shook his head. "Not yet. This is the soft threat. You walk this in. Show it. Let them know you're holding cards, but haven't played them all yet." Noah nodded slowly. It was strange. He didn't feel rage anymore. He felt clarity, like fog lifting to reveal a battlefield, and he finally knew where to place his feet. He slipped a USB drive from his pocket and loaded the folder onto it. Then he stood, placed the cap back on, and looked down at it resting in his palm like a tiny bomb. "You good?" Ryan asked. Noah nodded. "Yeah, I am." He turned toward the door, pocketing the drive. But just before he left, he paused. "I'm not the quiet one anymore," he said. Ryan smiled. "I know." Noah walked out, the soft click of the door behind him echoing louder than any slam. The truth had been pulled from the cloud, not by force, but by folly. Lily's vanity, Brandon's arrogance, and Carolyn's entitlement had all contributed. Every tap of their fingers had left a breadcrumb. And now, Noah held the entire loaf. He stepped into the light of the Denver morning. The air was crisp, the wind sharp with coming change. This wasn't just preparation anymore. It was declaration. He slid into his car, started the engine, and glanced at the rearview mirror, not to look back, but to steady himself. Time to deliver this to the queen of manipulation herself. Carolyn's words still echoed like smoke curling from a dying fire. But Noah didn't bite. He simply stood, picked up the envelope, and tapped the table gently with it. "This," he said softly, "is the son you raised. A man who finally understands silence is not peace. That giving in doesn't make you noble. It just makes you invisible." He walked slowly toward the fridge, peeled off Lily's colorful baby announcement magnet, and pinned the envelope in its place. A final message, plain as daylight. "Don't bother hiding it. Everyone should see it," he said, glancing toward Frank, who still hadn't spoken. But something shifted in the old man's face. A twitch of the jaw, a soft grunt of acknowledgement. Brandon muttered under his breath, pacing now. "So what, you gonna post this online? Make a TikTok about your poor, rich life?" Noah turned. "Number, I'm going to do something scarier. I'm going to follow the law. I'm going to let paperwork, not pity, decide this." Lily covered her face. "What about the baby?" Noah stared at her. No malice, just finality. "You use the baby as a strategy. Don't expect it to be a shield now." Carolyn slammed her mug into the sink, the ceramic cracking down the middle. "After all we gave you. After everything." Noah raised an eyebrow. "Everything? You mean letting me pay the mortgage? Or stepping over me to help Brandon play adult in someone else's home?" Frank finally spoke, his voice worn but clear. "Let the boy speak, Carolyn." She froze. Noah blinked at him. "You knew?" Frank took a sip of his coffee. "Heard enough. That tablet wasn't locked by accident." A silence spread wider than the table. Noah exhaled, shoulders lowering by a fraction. Then he looked at them all. His mother, seething. Lily, trembling. Brandon, fuming. And his father, old but still capable of quiet resistance. "I'll be at work," Noah said. "You have until tomorrow morning." Then he turned, walked toward the door, paused just once to glance at the shattered plate on the floor. For the first time in years, he didn't feel the need to clean up after anyone. Noah didn't linger in the living room after that. He went upstairs, not to sulk, but to breathe. The walls of the master bedroom still echoed faint traces of Brandon's cologne, a scent that used to irritate him without reason. Now, it represented something precise. Invasion. But it was his space again. He opened the windows, letting in the smell of rain and pine, and stripped the bed down to its bare frame. A new beginning should never sleep on old sheets. Downstairs, he could hear muffled movements. Carolyn, probably cleaning furiously as if scrubbing surfaces could erase what had just unfolded. Let her. Noah had spent years doing that same thing in his mind. Scrubbing, excusing, forgetting. But there were stains that needed to stay visible. He stepped into the kitchen an hour later to make coffee and found Frank at the counter. "No cream left," Frank muttered. Noah pulled out a backup from the fridge door. "I always keep one tucked in the back. Habit." Frank looked at him. "You always were the one thinking ahead." They sipped in silence. Frank didn't apologize. He didn't need to. His actions today, however late, had broken decades of habit. That was enough. From the living room, Carolyn's voice drifted faintly. She was on the phone, speaking in clipped tones. Noah didn't bother to listen. It didn't matter who she called. Her sister, the church, even a lawyer. What mattered was on paper. Signed. Filed. He opened the drawer next to the sink, placed the lease folder beside the utensils, and locked it with a quiet click. Later that evening, as the rain died and the clouds parted into a soft blue-gray dusk, Noah sat alone on the porch. The wind was gentle, brushing his face with something almost like grace. He heard the door open behind him. Carolyn stepped out, wrapped in a shawl, not quite meeting his eyes. "I signed the lease," she said unnecessarily. I know. You think this fixes everything? No, Noah said, voice steady. But it finally defines something. She nodded once, then sat beside him. They didn't speak after that. For the first time in years, silence wasn't a weapon. It was a truce. Carolyn called for a family meeting, but this time Noah came prepared. The living room was arranged with clinical precision, as if the arrangement of furniture could repair the damage in the air. The coffee table had a fresh bouquet. A tray of cookies sat untouched. Rain patterned gently against the windows, and outside, Brandon's SUV was idling, packed and ready, but pointed nowhere. Noah stepped into the room without fanfare. He wore a charcoal sweater, dark jeans, and an expression unreadable even to those who'd grown used to interpreting his silence. In his hand was a manila folder. Not thick, not dramatic, but heavy in implication. Carolyn sat rigidly upright in her usual chair, spine too straight for someone playing peacemaker. Brandon and Lily flanked her, both stiff and glaring. Frank leaned near the wall as if hoping to dissolve into it. Carolyn's voice carried the same tone she used at church brunches. "This is tearing us apart," she said, clasping her hands as though that made her a martyr. Noah didn't respond immediately. Instead, he placed the folder on the table and sat opposite them, legs crossed, hands calm. "It's exposing what's been true for a long time," he said softly. Lily shifted uncomfortably. Brandon scoffed. "Seriously?" Brandon said. "All because we stayed here a few weeks?" Noah tilted his head. "You didn't stay. You moved in, took over the bedroom, used my things, spoke about this house like it was yours. It wasn't about a few nights. It was about entitlement." Carolyn cut in. "That's a harsh word to use for family." He opened the folder, methodically pulling out the documents. The first, the deed to the house with his name in bold black print. The second, the 3-day notice legally served. The third, the lease, signed. "These aren't threats," Noah said. "They're boundaries." Carolyn's nostrils flared. "We raised you. We sacrificed for you. Now you're what, punishing us?" Frank stirred but said nothing. His hands folded in front of him, thumbs twitching. Carolyn continued, louder this time, as if volume could overwrite shame. "You're treating your own blood like criminals." "I'm treating my own name with respect," Noah replied. "Something you've taught me not to expect from you." Brandon stood suddenly, knocking the tray slightly off balance. The cookies clattered. "This is cold, transactional. Who even are you anymore?" "I'm the one who paid the mortgage while you played victim. I'm the one who gave up the room, the space, the silence, because you made a scene. I'm the one who got tired of giving." Lily's eyes brimmed with tears. "This isn't what we wanted." "Then what did you want?" Noah's tone remained even. "Me gone? Me erased? Me bankrupt?" Silence swallowed the room for a beat. Frank finally spoke. "We didn't raise you to be cold," he said, voice gravelly. "But we also didn't raise Brandon to believe this was his." Carolyn spun toward him, stunned. He looked at her with something like weariness. "You knew what this would come to." She ignored him, eyes locking onto Noah's. "We raised you. How dare you treat us like tenants?" Noah didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Then start acting like parents, not squatters." On Sunday morning, Brandon and Lily drove away. Silent, defeated. The clouds hung low over the cul-de-sac like they too bore witness to what was finally leaving the house. Noah stood on the front porch, one hand resting on the railing, coffee cooling in the other. The driveway stretched out before him like a stage after the last act. Brandon shoved a final box into the back of the SUV, its hatch creaking from overuse. Lily adjusted the seatbelt beneath her belly with trembling fingers. There were no dramatic speeches, no screaming. Just the dull scrape of cardboard, the thunk of boxes being wedged between hastily packed bags, and the muted tension of a family coming undone without ceremony. Noah didn't move. Lily turned, eyes red but still searching for softness. Her voice, brittle and small, cracked the stillness. Will you ever forgive us? Noah let the question hang there for a long second before replying. Forgiveness isn't a free pass. Lily blinked, lips parted as if hoping for a better ending. But there wasn't one. Just truth, spoken plainly. Brandon slammed the hatch closed. His eyes swept over Noah with disdain, landing somewhere between scorn and humiliation. You think this makes you the better man? He sneered, standing there like a damn judge. Noah sipped his coffee. No, he replied, voice even. It just makes me the owner. Brandon's jaw clenched. He wanted to say more, maybe even shout. But there was nothing left to take, nothing left to claim. His fingers drummed against the steering wheel as he slid into the driver's seat. Lily paused at the passenger door. She opened her mouth, but Brandon revved the engine before she could finish the thought. The SUV rolled down the driveway, slow at first, then sped up as it turned the corner. Gone. A soft engine purred up the opposite side of the street. Ryan's beat-up sedan pulled in just as Brandon and Lily disappeared around the bend. He stepped out, holding 2 paper cups. I thought they'd try one last plea, Ryan said, handing Noah the second coffee. Guess even parasites know when they've overstayed. Noah didn't respond right away. His eyes followed the street, not in longing, but in confirmation. The silence that settled afterward was almost sacred. Ryan took a sip. That's the sound of a house reclaiming its peace. Noah nodded. It's been a long time coming. They stood there for a few minutes, letting the quiet root itself. The trees swayed gently in the morning wind. Leaves scattered across the lawn. No screaming, no passive-aggressive footsteps, no slamming doors. Just stillness. Inside the house, movement flickered at the front window. The curtain shifted slightly. Carolyn stood behind it, unmoving, watching, her face unreadable. Not angry, not broken, just something else. Something neither Noah nor Ryan could quite name yet. But Noah saw her, and he didn't look away. Carolyn walked the hallway like a ghost. This time, she wasn't looking for Noah. She was avoiding him. The house was quieter than usual. Not the kind of peaceful quiet that followed laughter, but the kind that throbbed with things unsaid. Rain pattered faintly outside, its rhythm dull against the windows. Noah sat on the couch, flipping absently through a newspaper he wasn't reading. The creak of the floorboards signaled her presence. She passed by the living room without a glance. It wasn't the first time today. It had been barely 24 hours since Brandon and Lily's departure. The driveway still bore the faint tire marks of their SUV. Noah hadn't expected them to say goodbye. And they didn't. But the silence they left behind was more satisfying than any apology could have been. Carolyn's retreat was different. Since signing the lease, she'd moved like someone whose crown had been confiscated. The clink of dishes in the kitchen was softer now, her footsteps lighter, uncertain. Once, she ruled this house by tone and timing, deciding who ate, who sat where, what was acceptable to discuss. Now she walked like a guest in a hotel she'd once owned. In the late afternoon, Noah found himself in the kitchen, pouring himself coffee. Carolyn appeared at the doorway, her eyes puffy, dressed in her usual cashmere cardigan, but it seemed to hang heavier today. She offered a tight-lipped smile. I found that photo album, she said, her voice almost hopeful. The one from your high school graduation. Remember that party we threw? Noah turned slightly, nodding. Yeah. You made that lemon cake I hated but pretended to like. She chuckled, but it faltered halfway. You never said anything. You wouldn't have heard it then, Noah said gently, sipping his coffee. Carolyn leaned against the counter, twisting the hem of her sleeve. We did our best, you know. I did my best. I know, he replied, meeting her gaze. And I spent a long time convincing myself that was enough. The silence stretched again. She opened the fridge, closed it, then turned around without taking anything. Frank appeared briefly at the kitchen entrance, gave Noah a subtle nod, then disappeared back into his room. Noah caught the gesture and filed it away. His father, always quiet, was starting to show where he stood. Later that evening, Noah was at his desk reviewing work emails when a soft knock came at the door. "Come in." Carolyn entered, holding a ceramic mug. "Chamomile," she offered. "You used to like it when you couldn't sleep." He accepted the mug, though he didn't sip. She lingered by the bookshelf. "Do you hate me?" she asked suddenly, turning to face him. Her voice cracked, not from volume but restraint. Noah stared at her. His face was unreadable, calm but not cold. "I don't," he said quietly. "But I won't let you hurt me again." Carolyn blinked, as if the words hit harder than she'd braced for. She opened her mouth, then closed it, nodding slightly. "I'll go," she said, stepping out. Noah watched as she walked down the hall. The door to her bedroom clicked shut. Then, almost symbolically, the sound of a key turning. For the first time, she locked the door behind her. 1 week later, Carolyn signed her first rent check, with trembling hands. The morning sun spilled gently through the kitchen windows, warming the oak table that had seen more battles than meals in recent months. It was quiet, not the sullen kind, but the kind that settles when war ends and everyone begins to count what's left. Noah sat at the table with his laptop open, sipping black coffee. The kitchen, once filled with tension and passive-aggressive chatter, now breathed easier. The air no longer pressed down on him like it used to. Carolyn entered, her steps hesitant but measured. She carried a small envelope. She didn't meet his eyes as she placed it on the table. "For the month," she said, her voice thin but steady. Noah glanced at the envelope, then at her. He didn't reach for it right away. He let it sit between them like a quiet truth. "Thank you," he said after a pause. He opened the envelope, confirming the amount. It was exact, down to the last cent. No notes, no smiley faces, no perfumed paper. Just money like any tenant would submit. Noah logged into the shared spreadsheet Ryan had helped him set up. He entered the payment, marked the date, and clicked confirm. Carolyn stood for a moment longer. Then, without a word, she moved to the other side of the kitchen and began to make tea. Her motions were careful, choreographed to avoid intrusion. She didn't ask if he wanted a cup. He didn't offer one either. A soft buzz from his phone drew Noah's attention. "Ryan, did she pay?" Noah typed back. "She did." "Week early." "Ryan, install the cameras, just in case." Noah replied with a thumbs-up emoji. It was the kind of advice he might have brushed off before. Now he saw it for what it was. Not paranoia, but prudence. That afternoon, Noah unpacked a small box of security cameras he'd ordered online. Frank stood at the porch watching him, hands in his pockets. After a long moment, he stepped forward. "You need help with that?" Frank asked, nodding toward the box. Noah blinked. "Sure, thanks." Together, they climbed the ladder and mounted the first unit under the eaves of the house. Frank handed him screws, held steady the extension cord, even fetched a level without being asked. It was more participation than Noah could remember from his father in years. Later, Frank brought in 2 bags of groceries. No fanfare. He just placed them on the counter, unpacked them, and stored them away. Carolyn stayed in her room. The house had become strange in its order. Clean, predictable, lacking the storm of emotional manipulations that once passed for conversations. That evening, Noah reheated leftovers for himself. As he set his plate on the table, Carolyn emerged from the hallway. She paused at the archway as though uncertain whether to enter or turn away. He looked up. She stepped forward. "Do we eat dinner together? Or separately?" she asked, clutching her cardigan close. Noah didn't flinch. He didn't pause to consider or soften the response. "Let's start with separately," he said, his tone even. Carolyn nodded. No sigh, no protest, no guilt-laced commentary. Just a nod. For once, no argument. Noah sat in the master bedroom. His room again. Sunlight pouring in. The walls glowed amber as the late afternoon sun bathed everything in warmth. The air smelled faintly of pine from the newly polished shelves. The master bedroom, once overrun with Lily's pastel chaos and Brandon's gym gear, was now returned to its rightful calm. Noah's books neatly stacked, a reading lamp by the recliner, and a single photo frame he had just placed back on the shelf. A younger him on his graduation day, arms flung wide, Frank and Carolyn standing behind him, blurry but present. He exhaled deeply and let the quiet wrap around him. There was no sound of stomping feet upstairs, no muffled bickering from the kitchen, no thud of a duffel bag being dropped on the couch. Only the ticking of the old wall clock and the creak of wood settling under the golden hour. His phone buzzed on the nightstand. Ryan. Dinner at 6, you in? Noah smiled faintly. He typed back, yes, I'll join you. Simple. No explanation, no apology. His phone buzzed again. This time a notification from the banking app. Brandon requested $800. For the baby stuff. Please. Noah didn't even hesitate. He clicked decline and set the phone face down. His eyes drifted toward the dresser. On it sat a stack of manila folders, copies of the deed, the signed lease agreement, digital transcripts from the recording, screenshots from Lily's iCloud. Organized, dated, labeled. Not for revenge, for closure, for insurance, for peace. A soft knock came from downstairs, followed by the low rumble of Frank's voice. I'll be outside if you need anything. Thought I'd mow the lawn before sunset. Noah opened the door to the landing. Thanks, Dad, he called out. Frank nodded once and disappeared around the porch corner, the faint clatter of tools following. Noah stepped back into his room and looked around. His books were back in alphabetical order. His guitar, untouched for months, rested against the wall near the window. The bedding was no longer floral or frilly, but navy and crisp. Everything here now belonged to him, not just by law, but by spirit. He sat at the desk and flipped open a leather-bound journal. He hadn't written in it since before Brandon and Lily arrived. The last entry was dated over a month ago. It read simply, I feel like a stranger in my own life. Noah stared at the sentence for a long moment. Then, slowly, he wrote beneath it, Today I came home. The room felt even warmer somehow. Just as he capped the pen, there was another knock. Softer, hesitant. He opened the door and found no one there. Only a note, folded neatly and placed on the doormat. He picked it up, recognizing the slanted cursive immediately. Carolyn's handwriting. Noah closed the door before reading it. He sat back on the edge of the bed, unfolded the paper with deliberate care. I'm sorry, if you ever want to talk, I'll listen this time. There was no signature, just those few words. He stared at it, his expression unreadable. Then, with a quiet resolve, he stood, crossed the room, and opened the top drawer of his desk. Inside was the deed to the house, tucked beneath a legal pad and a few old utility bills. Noah gently placed the note beside the deed, then closed the drawer. The house was no longer just a structure. It was a boundary, rebuilt brick by brick with truth and resolve. What once felt like a slow unraveling of dignity became a quiet triumph of clarity, where the manipulative lost their grip and the silent reclaimed their voice. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late, but it resonates powerfully once it's heard. Sometimes all it takes is one step forward to remind the world you were never meant to kneel. If you felt this story resonate with your own journey, don't forget to like, share, and comment below. Type 1 if you felt understood, or 2 if you're still waiting for your own ending.